The topics to be addressed in this module are an overview of the Magento 2 platform, an overview of its architecture, and a discussion around modules and their role in Magento 2's system. Magento 2 continues to provide the same flexibility and extensibility of Magento 1 while introducing structural changes that address challenges around describing dependencies across the system for easier upgrades and around containing business logic within one system layer. Magento 2's instantiation mechanism and code generation provide numerous ways to customize, such as through the use of plugins. Magento 2, like Magento 1, is a modular system but to a much higher degree. Magento 2 assigns greater independence to the modules. They function more as standalone units. An area is a scope in the configuration that allows you to load only the configuration files and options that are required for a specific request. Within Magento 2, there are areas for front-end, admin, and install. The purpose of areas within Magento is to increase efficiency by not requiring the loading of the entire configuration for every request. For example, if you are invoking a REST web service, a corresponding area, such as /rest, loads code that answers only the REST call, and it does not load, for example, the code that generates HTML pages using layouts. Each area can have completely different code on how to process URLs and requests. Typically, an area contains behavior and view components that operate separately. However, an area can have only one component. For instance, the cron area, which has no view component. If your extension works in several areas, you should make sure it has separate behavior and view components for each area. This slide lists key Magento 2 concepts. We'll review them one by one. Number 1. Magento 2 is a modular system with its own specific structure. There are some exceptions to this rule. For example, framework files are not technically modular, and some generic static files belong to a theme, not a module. Most of the Magento 2 code is wrapped in modules. We will cover module folder structure later. Number 2. Themes are a set of files that define how a website will look. Themes include all types of static assets and are deeply connected to the Magento 2 rendering system, which is covered in Unit 3. Some static files are located in the module folder, while others are in a theme location. Themes and modules are connected, a concept covered in more detail later. For now, it is important to understand that while PHP code is most likely located in modules, generic static assets are organized in themes. Number 3. Layout, an essential concept in the Magento 2 rendering system, is a set of XML files that define which elements should be on a page, topology. Layout configuration defines which blocks should be present on a page and the block hierarchy. Block is a special PHP class in Magento 2 that is usually, but not always, connected to a template. Each block's generated HTML together comprises the whole page. So a block class generates a piece of HTML using its template, and layout defines which blocks should be included on the page. Layouts are highly configurable and extendable. You can create layout updates in your module to modify any existing page, or create a new layout for a new page. We will discuss layouts in depth in Unit 3. Number 4. In Magento 2, there are several types of configuration files. For example, events.xml, routes.xml, acl.xml, and more. Those files are distributed across different modules. In other words, each module can have its own set of standard config files. When a certain type of information is requested by an application, like a list of available routes, Magento merges all config files of a certain type, for example routes.xml, and derives information from there. Number 5. Object instantiation magic, or dependency injection, DI, is a Magento 2 feature. When you need a new object, you declare it or its interface in the constructor, and Magento will deliver an instance. We will discuss this in greater depth later in this unit in Module 5. Number 6. Naming conventions are another important feature of Magento. Routes are constructed in a special way in Magento 2. To process a route, you need to create a corresponding controller and register your route in routes.xml. We will talk more about this in the next unit, Unit 2. Layouts are also connected to route names, so in order to add a new element to a page, you need to create a special layout update file whose name is related to the route. We will talk about layouts in Unit 3. Number 7. Events and plugins are two major customization techniques in Magento 2. Events are fired in the core code, and developers can add observers to that event. Each event has parameters, so a developer can use or even modify them. Plugin technology allows developers to add specific behavior to every public method of each class. This is a very powerful tool, described more fully later in this unit in Module 7.
This slide lists major Magento 2 components. These are high-level elements of Magento with which every developer will interact. Configuration in Magento refers to the general configuration of an instance. It is not the same as module configuration. General configuration defines which modules are available, the database credentials, and more. Module-specific configuration defines the behavior of a module. Framework is low-level code, not related to features and business logic. Framework defines how the whole system works. For example, interaction with databases, URL processing, logging, remote requests to tools. Modules are where Magento business logic and features are implemented. When developing with Magento, you create your own modules. Command line tool is a small but critical part of Magento 2. It is a bin Magento script that allows you to do a host of different things, like cleaning the cache, generating static content, and telling Magento to execute database upgrades. Theme is a set of files, typically static assets, that define how pages look. Parts of a theme can be located in modules, for example, functional JavaScript, or in the folder App Design. Magento U offers an entire course on how to use theming in Magento 2. DevTools include scripts and tools that assist a Magento developer. For example, a testing framework would be located here. Generated. Generate and contain all necessary classes generated by Magento 2 via interceptor or plugin functionality. Very useful since it speeds up the system.
Magento 2 can be installed in two ways, by cloning the repository or by using a composer installation. The themes and framework will vary based on the module paths. This slide shows the different paths when using either the composer or repository methods. You can find more information about installation in the official documentation. There are many different file types used in Magento 2. This course focuses on the first 4 types presented on this slide. The last 3 apply to front-end development, which is covered in a separate Magento U course. Magento 2 configuration can be confusing to a developer who has never worked with Magento before, so all the major aspects will be covered in this course. We can divide all configuration into 3 separate groups. Global configuration, Magento instance configuration, which defines which modules are enabled, database credentials, session management, and so on. Module configuration, defines a module's behavior, which routes it supports, which events it handles, etc. Theme configuration, defines a theme's name, parent, and some other details, usually a very small amount of code.
This slide presents types of PHP classes in Magento 2. Model Resource Collection. These classes are used to interact with databases and to implement specific entity behavior, such as product or customer. Note that Magento 2 is moving away from using these classes to using API interfaces, but currently these classes are still an important part of Magento. API interface. This is an internal module API that defines which operations are available. It includes CRUD operations for a module's entities, as well as other module-specific operations, such as customer login. Magento 2 has a special mechanism that assigns certain classes to implement an API interface. We will discuss this more in Unit 5. Controllers. Controllers are classes that handle specific pages in accordance with the controller mode in the MVC Model View Controller pattern. Blocks. Blocks are special classes that represent a part of a page. Blocks are usually, but not always, connected to PHTML template files. Blocks can be thought of as a data container for a template, which represents a piece of the HTML on the page. We will talk more about blocks in Unit 3. Observers. Magento 2 fires events in different places along its execution flow. Developers can create observer classes that will react to events. Plugins. Plugins are a very powerful customization technique. Plugins can be thought of as a wrapper around any public method of any class. A developer can modify a method's behavior by using plugins. Helpers. Helpers are auxiliary classes that encapsulate some useful functions, such as performing tax calculations. Schema data patches. These scripts are special files that update a database schema or add data to a database. We will talk more about databases and scripts in Unit 4. UI components. The UI component technology in Magento 2 allows a developer to create a component, an independent element on a page with its own back-end part. We will talk more about UI components in Unit 3. Other. Note that while we have listed the most important PHP class types here, it is not a complete list.
This slide shows the typical development customization process. Your class is placed somewhere in the execution flow, where some of its methods get executed. There are many ways that this can be accomplished, including adding the class into the array of another class's constructor, creating a plugin, creating an observer. This slide provides more detail on enabling custom code. We will cover all of these later in this course. Note that this list is not complete. It provides more commonly used generic steps rather than feature-specific ways. For example, create a backend attribute for a product or a total model for a quote. Magento has a variety of ways to execute your code in different situations. In Magento 2, a module is now contained within a single folder. In Magento 2, modules have been made more granular, are better organized, and their dependencies are more explicit. This facilitates building scalable and maintainable shops. Magento 2 modules are also smaller, and the functionality is grouped in a more logical manner. For example, if you are looking for a checkout code, you only have to look in Checkout. A module provides specific product features by implementing new functionality or extending the functionality of other modules. Each module is designed to function independently, so the inclusion or exclusion of a particular module does not impact the functionality of other modules. This maximizes flexibility when customizing a site. While modules primarily define new business features or customizations to existing ones, they can also define a default user interface for those features, which are customizable by themes.
Location example. The customer module of Magento can be found at vendor magento module-customer. Third-party modules can also be installed directly into the vendor folder from packages or private repositories by Composer. Modules under vendor make themselves known to Magento using a Composer autoload file callback, as in the code on your screen.
To name a module, follow the Magento standards on naming convention and module location within a file system. A module name consists of the vendor name and the module name separated with an underscore.
Both the vendor and the module name have to start with an uppercase character. For example, Magento_customer. Code base of the custom module, root, app, code, vendor, module. Custom theme files, root, app, design, area, vendor, theme, vendor_module. Code base of custom module, root, app, code, vendor, module. Custom theme files, root, app, design, module, theme.
Magento 2 is built of modules. Its core is technically a set of modules. When a developer creates a customization, the first thing to do is to create a module. The slide describes a module. It is technically a folder located in a specific place, app code or vendor name, which has a few required elements such as the etc module.xml file and registration.php file. Modules are grouped into vendors, so typically you define a vendor folder first, for example, app code Magento U. Magento U is a vendor name here. And then a module name, for example, app code Magento U my module. My module is a module name. In Magento, modules are named vendor_module. For example, Magento_catalog. Magento equals vendor and catalog equals module, or Magento U_my module. Note that module names are case sensitive. In the following slides, we will cover the module.xml and registration.php files. The module.xml file must be located in the etc subfolder of a module, for example, Magento catalog etc. Note that the etc starts with a lowercase e, while typically a module's subfolders start with an uppercase letter. The module.xml file includes pieces of information, name, and dependencies.
This code example from composer.json shows the Magento catalog inventory hard dependency on Magento catalog and other modules. For more information, see app, code, Magento, catalog inventory, composer.json in your installation.
Here's an example of a registration.php file. This file follows a typical pattern. The only thing you will change here for your module is the module name, for example, Magento U_my module. Note that the module name must match the module path, so the registration.php file and the Magento U_my module should be located either in app code Magento U_my module registration.php or in the vendor folder, vendor Magento U module-my module.
The concept of dependencies or using and being dependent upon another module's features is important in Magento. Dependency usually means that a module is loaded after another module. You define your module in the module node and then define which modules depend on this module in the sequence node. Modules can be dependent upon the following components: other modules, PHP extensions, and libraries, either Magento Framework Library or third-party libraries. Only soft sort order dependencies on other Magento modules can be declared in module.xml. Other dependencies can be listed in a module composer.json configuration file. Best practice: you can lose historical information contained in a module if it is removed or disabled. We recommend storing such information before you remove or disable a module. Knowing the difference between hard and soft dependencies is important when you have to make configuration changes. Hard dependencies. The module cannot work if the module on which it is dependent is not installed. Examples of hard dependencies include: the module contains code that directly uses logic from another module, instances, class constants, static methods, public class properties, interfaces, and traits. The module contains strings that include class names, method names, class constants, class properties, interfaces, and traits from another module. The module deserializes an object declared in another module. The module uses or modifies the database tables used by another module. Soft dependencies. The module is able to function without the other modules on which it depends. Examples of soft dependencies include: the module directly checks another module's availability, the module extends another module's configuration, the module extends another module's layout.
If your app has external dependencies, for example, you need a third-party library for a module, you will need to use Composer. A module's hard dependencies, that is, all of the components upon which the module is dependent, are listed in the module's composer.json file. The load order of any dependencies on a module is declared using the sequence element in the module.xml file. You use the sequence node to define the load order for modules. If your module depends on other Magento modules, you can include that module in the sequence so it will be loaded afterwards. The sequence element is optional and is used only when the order in which components are loaded or installed is important. Only for modules, no other component type is entered in the sequence section. This assumes that using the sequence node is a best practice. See your course exercises guide for instructions on how to complete this exercise and the solution.